2021 meeting of the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can either accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you don't agree with the decision that we make, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may in fact sponsor a new ordinance regarding that same item. All items do require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, August 24th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to speak on the item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, September 7th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will be again allowed to speak on the item at that time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to this board for discussion and ultimate action. Please call the roll to verify quorum.
Jasinski,
Here.
Marone,
Here.
Hanson. Here. Becker,
Here.
Staple.
All right, first item on the agenda is public comment. Now, this board has adopted a public participation policy which does provide 15 minutes for that purpose. It is granted on a first-come, first-served basis. Citizens must, in fact, as I just said, both provide name and address and may speak on matters related to traffic items within the authority of the board. Statements should be addressed to the board members and not to staff or other persons. Items that are on the agenda should be addressed at the time the item is read and not during this period for public comment. Statements are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens may only provide comment one time unless special permission is granted by the board. Public comments received via email will be shared with the board and become part of the minutes. And I should note that we did receive written comment on one of this afternoon's agenda items. So at this point, if there's anyone that would like to provide a general public comment, this would be your opportunity. Seeing none, we will then move to the introduction of the alternative board member. I will turn that to you, Mr. Collins.
Yes, we have a new alternate board member. He wasn't able to make it tonight, so I guess we'll table that to a future meeting, but Mike Beardsley is the new alternate member.
Thank you, which then brings us to approval of minutes. I need a second to bring it to the table for...
Second.
All right. Does anyone have any questions, additions, comments, deletions, housekeeping as it relates to the minutes of the prior meeting? Seeing none, call roll on approval of minutes.
Jasinski,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. Which then brings us to old business, carried over from 2 meetings ago, at least one, which is election of officers. It is that time of year again. I would open the table for nominations to be chair and or vice chair.
I move that we lay it over again since a lot of the people are missing. Or...
I can't say I disagree. I question though, Mr. Collins and Courtney, how long can we prolong this process? We've already done it once or twice. I mean,
I think we can. It's up to the board, I think, if you want to.
I'd say like one more meeting.
okay.
If-
I would
You got
ask.
3 members plus the alternate, all missing. That's half the people.
What you say is true, Mr. Szynski. I just wanted to make sure we weren't running afoul of some other
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
process I was unaware of. Well, that being said, I would ask that you formalize your request to lay over.
Okay, yeah, I move that we lay over the nominations till next meeting.
Need a second?
Second.
Call the roll. The motion.
Jasinski,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. Which then brings us to new business. First item being mid-block crosswalk request on Joslyn Street near Lourdes Academy.
Yeah, okay, this item, Lourdes Academy is acquiring the former storage unit site, which over here. So with that, they're constructing a parking lot in that area, and doing a small expansion of their current building. Parking, from what I understand, is going to be primarily used by students and staff. Their engineers estimate 150 to 200 crossings per school day between the students, staff, and volunteers. And they're anticipating construction this fall. Generally we're generally not in favor of mid-block crossings because that's not where motorists generally expect pedestrians. But historically, we've considered mid-block crossings where there are more than 50 crossings per day. And due to the high volume of anticipated crossings, that this would make sense in that area or be warranted. So I believe we have a couple gentlemen here from Lourdes to
Step to the podium if you'd like to, anything again, name and address for the record.
I'm John Dinnigan, president of Lourdes Academy, and my address is 1575 West Haven Circle in Oshkosh. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have about the situation.
Is the lot going to be primarily used for, Mr. Collins said students and staff, but is it going to be earmarked in any way, shape, or form? I mean, is it going to be a free-for-all as to who parks there?
They will be assigned parking places. They'll be striped and numbered, and so.
Just like the current parking lot is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it could be either students or staff, it's not going to be
Correct.
staff only?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had for questions. Courtney?
What type of crosswalk? Will it have like blinking lights? We discussed any of this?
No, it basically, well, I can tell you what it'll be. It'll be our traditional mid-block crossing, which is, we generally use two different types of crossings. We use it's called a ladder continental style crossing for mid-block, which is the bold, so it's the bold white lines instead of the parallel lines. So that's what we generally use for mid-block crossings. This one, we weren't going to put like RFBs or anything. Those are generally pretty expensive, and generally those are more for where we have high pedestrian crossings and high number of vehicles, where Jocelyn, other than the school, doesn't really get a whole lot of traffic.
Unless there's a Clayton Stadium event and those are generally gonna be after school hours.
Right, and those will be further down.
A question I do have for you, Mr. Collins, is it the crosswalk placement tentatively going to be before the driveway that we see where the hand is, or after?
It'll be this way,
Right, oh, okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then,
It's going to be to the
Storage
south of
facility
there.
underlies
that
it.
goes to my question is, if we put a crosswalk there, what queuing distance do we have between that and Witzel? How many cars can stack? Well, kids are in the crosswalk, or
It's-
anyone else. is.
That's quite a ways from the intersection. I don't remember the exact location, but
I'm gonna say a couple hundred feet.
Okay.
it was
Again,
quite a
I
ways.
just wanted to make sure we weren't backing traffic into, to Witzel,
So yeah, that's
potentially.
probably, so 20,
Will there be just like just a
least
plain yellow
15.
pedestrian crossing sign or?
Yep, yeah, so it'll be the standard. Basically, we generally have to put an advance warning sign and then one right at the intersection. And the new ones that we use currently are the fluorescent yellow.
Does anyone have any questions for the gentleman at the podium? Otherwise, we can allow him to sit down. We've kind of already branched into it, but I technically do need a second to discuss it. You
Second.
could sit down and listen.
Second.
All right, anyone with any other questions that haven't already been covered? All right, seeing none, would you please call the roll on the mid-block crosswalk issue?
Shazinski,
Aye.
Marone,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
and Becker.
Aye. Which brings us to the request to remove the no parking restriction on West 7th Ave.
Okay. This item is, and I see Mr. David's here, it's a request from the business owner there that owns and operates this facility here. So the background is they currently have 8 stalls and 8 employees, so he's looking for at least one additional parking area. And I think they've been there for a few years. He can expound on that. But apparently they have more employees than when they moved in. So what he would like to do is park on this side of the street somewhere in this area. And when we designed that road, I wasn't here at the time, but I know this road was designed with no parking due to the cul-de-sac and the need for vehicles to turn around in this area. The road's 32 feet wide, and we've discussed this a little bit. I don't see that anything's really changed since we constructed the road that would make that a wise decision to allow parking there. I've checked with Public Works and the fire department. The fire department's not in favor of it just because of the need if they would have to turn apparatus here. And Public Works is not in favor of it due to the cul-de-sac, the width of the street, and any street maintenance issues. I'll let him talk to you more about it, but I think there's probably a better solution. I know that we did get a letter from the neighbors because he, in the interim, was parking back on this lilac back here, and obviously they don't like that. So that's kind of where we're at.
What about further west, closer to Red Robin? Is there room for a car or two there? Or- Yeah, up in that area.
Up in this area?
You get farther though, so you get one car there, potentially, maybe two, one on either side.
I mean, that doesn't seem
That would
like
be a better option
Yeah.
than back here.
Yeah, because they could turn around further east and
Yeah.
then, have room to maneuver around them on the other
Right.
side.
My only concern there would be with, cars coming in and out of these driveways, but that's better than down there, obviously, coming out of the
Well,
cul-de-sac.
I mean, arguably, is there room for one car there? You've gotta be 15 feet off the fire hydrant.
Oh, yeah, I didn't.
Yeah,
What
that's-
about on the other side of the street? How many can you fit past that curb right there? Like if you turn it around? Two?
Tops.
Yeah, I remember ways back, when the jewelry store was there, they had an agreement with CVS to park, like 3 vehicles or.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, the CVS parking lot's usually like not that full, so
Yeah, especially in
say-
that area, it's away from the CVS entrance, that.
That would be a potential solution.
If you'd like to comment, fodder for some questions. Again, name and address.
My name is John Davids. I reside at 17, the business is 1755 West 7th Ave. I reside at 1560 Arboretum Drive. So we've been there about 2.5 years. We've been in business 6 years. We bought this property and have been good neighbors in the neighborhood. I know the letter that you received, one of the first one on there was from Ann Froikley. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but if y'all remember when they put up the CVS, she was the kind of the leader to try to keep the CVS from going up. And she had various concerns when we moved in there about our signage, and we've satisfied all of her concerns, and we've been good neighbors to her. And so when I had to park in front of her house, she wasn't too pleased about that. And one of the things that she shared with me about that was that when they put that cul-de-sac in there and they did all that landscaping, they consulted with her on lots of things. Back then, Darren Burch was I don't know what his title is, but I think you all know who Darren is and what he did. And he literally asked her about whether she wanted parking in that cul-de-sac, and she said no, because she was against kind of everything, but she was settling. And given the circumstances today, she said she can't see any reason why it would be a problem. It'd be a better alternative for me to park there in front rather than on her street. The reason, and I parked in the place where Mr. Collins pointed out initially for 2.5 years on occasion. I can't say I park there every day, but after assessing the options, that seemed to me to be the best option. I always park as close to that driveway as I can to give the best run at that, so people won't have to deviate into another lane. You're on Lilac now, aren't you? Oh, no,
No,
okay, I
it's
see where you
just,
are.
that's an old photo.
So anyway,
Sorry.
the long and the short of it is
Like right
that
here.
I try to park as close to that driveway as I can, 5 feet from it, so that it produces the least amount of restriction in the road off that cul-de-sac. And no problem. One day I happened to get a ticket, and I actually spoke to the officer who wrote it. He can't remember why, but he did say that nobody complained or anything. Just, I don't know if it was a slow day or what. But anyway, so since then, I've not parked there. As far as parking in someone else's parking lot, there's a liability to them if I would slip and fall in their parking lot. Their insurance rates would reflect that. I happen to be friends with other business owners whose insurance rates have gone up. In my neighborhood on Arboretum, if you drive by there at 7 o'clock in the morning, that street's already full of cars from Arborview Manor. All the caregivers park on the street because they don't have enough parking. And they used to park in Fratello's parking lot, that secondary lot on the corner, and they can't park there anymore because of the insurance issue that she has, that Heidi Suplee has. So I'm hesitant to ask one of my neighbors to let me park in their driveway because I don't want to put that liability on anybody else. So this, I'm a reasonable man looking for a reasonable solution. That seems like the most reasonable solution. Some other, if I park forward of that driveway, Mr. Collins is correct. In my mind, that presents a blind spot for people trying to pull out. You know, I haven't had anybody be able to tell me how that's a safety concern where I'm parking there, honestly, including the officer who wrote me a ticket. On my street, Arboretum, on any given day, that street is lined with cars from Fratello's. People go over the center line to go around the curve in front of the things, and that's, I don't know how that could be acceptable and me not having room. I know another concern of Mr. Collins is that I was asking for a personal parking spot. And, you know, I'm a reasonable man, so I would admit that I can park in my parking lot if I had that section available for should someone need to park on the street. And we have 8 office staff, one of which, no, that's not true, 7 office staff, one of which works remote. So on any given day, we have 2 available spots. So we don't have a lot of traffic. We have applicants coming in, applying for jobs, and we have family members coming in to discuss their loved one's care. And that's pretty much the extent of. So if I made a habit to park in my own parking lot, the amount of people that would have to park on the street would be relatively infrequent. And that would be my request.
Any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. I don't know that we have an actual second on the table. All right. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Collins?
Personally, I'd be more comfortable adding, like, if you go back where that no parking sign is, like adding one space there, or maybe a space on the,
On this side, you're saying?
yeah, where
On the other one?
yeah, like closer to the driveway. And then, maybe on the north side, like add a couple street parking places, but I'm more in favor of adding them in other sections than in the section where you're asking for it. You know, because it's too close to the cul-de-sac and the CVS driveway. You know, yeah, right where that no parking is, you could add a spot forward to that, and maybe one then on the other side ahead of the fire hydrant or behind it. You know, I mean, for concerns of people pulling out of the parking lot, it's not like you got 100 cars coming out of beyond the cul-de-sac, you know, I mean, how many people come out of CVS turning out of the cul-de-sac? Probably more are coming out of their other
The
driveway.
cul-de-sac looks brand new.
Am I able to?
Sure, go ahead.
So, if that's the solution, I'm not arguing against that solution. I want what's safest and most practical. The amount of cars that go to a CVS is significantly higher than the number of cars that leave CVS that way. Because people come up, if you're coming off of Keller, they turn right onto there, or even left across, that isn't bad. But if they need to go back to the west, they go out the other way onto 9th. So there's very, very few cars that come back to the west on 7th Avenue. If you did a traffic count there, you would say, by the seat of my pants, I would say that there's 4 times as many cars that go east than go west.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, I think it's safer to put cars on that side as to where you're talking about.
If that's the solution, I'm happy, but
Yeah, it's about a horse apiece for you as convenience wise, you know, it's distance
Especially if the
wise.
fire department recommends it for turning around. It would give them more access when making their full circle instead of having to come all the way out to go around cars on the
Well,
north-hand
it
side.
seems like the fire department comes and does an inspection on us about every 3 months. And they come with the whole crew and they go around the cul-de-sac and I've seen them turn around.
I get that, but it's
Yeah.
easier to go straight out of a turn
Yeah.
instead of try to weave around
Sure, I understand.
things.
But my concern with putting a parking spot near that fire hydrant is if the apparatus has to go to the cul-de-sac and turn around,
That's what
they're
I'm-
gonna stop in front of that fire hydrant. So you, sir, are gonna have a total loss in your car potentially.
Right.
If it's, if there's a,
I don't know if we could fit 2 spots right into this area where you've got the thing now, but
If you went back to the cul-de-sac, Mr. Collins, and from that where the no parking sign is or that diamond shaped sign is,
It's
go back.
It's the
Further
old
to the
photo.
west.
Yeah, but it keeps turning back to the old
Yeah, it
picture.
goes to the
Yeah.
old.
love Google Maps.
Oh, you get way deep in the cul-de-sac and then try to turn around, I think. Because I've done it. So anyway, looking at it in reverse though, from where that sign is there, the diamond shaped sign, from there to their driveway is 75 feet. So I don't know that you can grasp that from what you're looking at
yeah,
there.
it doesn't look that.
So
wide.
you could realistically park 3 cars there. I mean, tight, right? But I would guess that occasionally you'll have 1 car parked there. And like I say, my experience has been that over the last 2.5 years, it's not caused anybody any issue. I parked there on Saturday when I was cutting grass, and I watched a car come out of CVS, and he went past my car and my trailer, which is probably about 45 feet of vehicle, without crossing the center line.
Yeah, but do you understand where the fire department's coming?
That's why I'm saying if you're further back, you'd be less likely to impede their ability to get to that fire hydrant back there than,
But we're talking about for the turnaround for a fire truck. That was
Yeah.
their concern when they first said something about it. Because you said they come for the inspections, correct? Have you ever had cars parked there while they're turning their
Yes.
vehicles around in there? You
Yes,
have?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure.
No, I understand.
Hypothetically, Mr. Collins, if we were to, yes, there we go, stay right there. If we were to allow parking where we now see that no parking this side sign, is there a way we can limit it to 1 car?
Yeah. I would just,
Yeah, just how many
when I write
feet,
the
yeah.
ordinance, it's by feet, so
Well,
I would just, I
theoretical versus practical though.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you can, so you would, you'd place this, I'd write the ordinance based on, a car is generally 20 feet, now with trucks, you probably want to use like 22, but I would basically write the ordinance so it would be no parking from X number of feet from Keller Road to X number, and then it'd start again at X number of feet from there to the end of the cul-de-sac. So in essence, you would limit how many feet you could park, and then you'd place the signs at the start and the end of that.
and that goes to my point, which is, would it be smarter to sign it so as to allow parking only between 2 signs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's not what he just said.
I know.
but that's in
I
essence
agree
what it
on
would
that,
be.
though.
I know, and
Yeah.
I
Less
get
wording.
it, theory versus practice.
Right.
Because if we do it as you suggest, I can very easily see 2, potentially 3 cars trying to sneak their way into that space.
Right. Basically, you have to put a no parking sign on each side, with the arrows facing out.
Could we not just draw a space separated?
No, it doesn't
painted
work
line.
either.
It doesn't?
No, people are sometimes, again, I would hope the officer in the back of the room would agree with me, they're somewhat oblivious to the white lines painted on Main Street for sure. If you notice as you drive down Main, you got cars this far into the next spot, just because, oh, it was open. Not the point, but.
I would also tell you that compliance with whatever you decide would be pretty easy to regulate, because I've never seen anyone have outside of people visiting my business, having a need to ever park there.
Well, yeah,
I
that's
get
the saving grace, but.
Yeah,
How far, would, from the driveway, would 2 parking spaces be? Would it be to where the telephone pole is, or?
No, you're probably looking more where the cup is, I would guess, because you gotta be
Yeah.
at least 4 feet off the
Yeah,
driveway.
4 feet from the driveways, so.
Where would you estimate that would, spaces would be?
Right up in there somewhere. Which causes a problem going around that curve.
Right. And I think you only need 1 space, right? Or that's what you were thinking?
you know, again, it would be so infrequent if, you know, I'm a reasonable man looking for a reasonable solution. If one space gets it done, that will be okay. Again, and I understand there's all things to consider, but from where that diamond sign is forward to that driveway, the cost of the city would be the change of the sign that's up there now that says no parking to say parking to the thing. And over 2.5 years, it's kind of been proved out there's no safety issue. But if you want one car on the south side of the road, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to make it 1 space on the south side. And that'd be it, you know. Deny the north side spot there.
Is there a second on the table?
Could it fit too reasonably?
In the spot indicated here?
Yes.
I-
asked you.
If you want to accept that as a friendly amendment, Mr. Szynski, that's up to
Yeah,
you.
oh yeah, like, that was my initial idea, was to have 2, because, you know, kind of why I was asking about it. You know, maybe start with 2, and then if we have problems, cut it down to 1, you know. You know what I mean?
I don't know, that my concern would be coming around this curve if you have,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's why, but I certainly don't see any problem adding 1 there.
I would suggest to start with 1.
Okay, and then if it works
and
out
then, you
really
know,
good, we
you
get
get-
it.
if it works out and he needs more, then he can come back and ask for more space. But I think I would be, as far as staff goes, I would be more supportive of something in this area than down here.
All right, so we still have Mr. Szynski's amendment, if you will, on the table.
Yeah, that's to add 1 space closer to the driveway on the south side of the street.
Still looking for a second.
Well, I think it's safer on this side, the south side of the street. I understand that he wants a parking spot, so I would want to, like, make that happen for him. I guess I'll go ahead and second his motion.
Okay. I don't have any issue. I mean, it was kind of my first thought in this process. You know, my fear is we're gonna wind up with more than 1 car there. So again, as stretched as thin as patrol is, I would, apparently we've had an officer in that neighborhood at least on 1 prior occasion.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see 2 cars there, so that's the only caveat I would throw in there, Mr. Collins. And the word of advice I would give you, sir, is realize that that's an open spot now, so someone may park there that you don't want to park there. Well, it's just, it is what it is.
Public parking, right?
Yep, so,
Yeah, you could maybe put a time restriction on their length of time.
but that doesn't help him if he's the one parking there and he's.
Oh,
there
yeah,
for 10
yeah,
hours.
that's true, yeah.
I'm not worried about it. It's not an issue.
Okay, well, as it sits on the table right now, then we've got 1 parking spot in that location as amended by Mr. Szynski. Any further comments or questions on that before I call roll on the amended agenda item? All right, seeing none, you have a full understanding of what we're trying to accomplish there?
Mhm.
Okay, then please call the roll.
Hanson,
Aye.
Becker,
Aye.
Szynski,
Aye.
and Marone.
Aye.
All right, which brings us to Agenda 6, the Algoma Boulevard Reconstruction Project.
All right, Algoma Boulevard is going to be reconstructed in 2022 from Wisconsin Street to Congress Avenue. And Mr. Garrick, our city engineer, is here. So he has the preliminary road design drafted. So we'd like to show you that. I'm gonna turn this over here. And here's a hard copy. Thank you, guys. You guys are either welcome to stay or you can go. It's up to you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll just kind of quick run through this. I don't think there's necessarily any action item per se. It's just kind of any feedback on where we're at today. I guess the big caveat I'm gonna throw out there initially is there's not a whole lot of change from what's out there today. We're keeping it relatively similar. Kind of starting up at Congress and Algoma. The alignment north and south of Congress is going to be a little straighter through the intersection. Initially, there was a little offset to the, I'll call it north east. So we're aligning the straight through, so kind of a better aligning the intersection as one. The existing pavement out there is a 33-foot wide, kind of through the area, main corridor. It widens out at the intersection. I'm not sure what that exact dimension is, but we're looking at a 36-foot street at the intersection, two 12-foot straight, and then right and left turn lanes, and then a dedicated left at another 12 feet. That will then, as you head south, neck down to a 32-foot street, having two 12-foot lanes and an 8-foot parking lane on the what will be south/west side of Algoma. That's along the Public Museum. There's parking there currently. Again, continuing parking along that south and west side till we hit New York Avenue. Again, currently the road width's a 33-foot. We're proposing a 32, again, the two 12-foot through lanes and the 8-foot parking lane. South of New York,
Can I
yep.
interrupt before you
Yeah,
go?
go ahehed.
Was there any consideration given to straightening that out? So it's not zagged or zigged, depending on
Are you talking about through the
New York across Algoma.
straightening New York? That is an excellent thought, but in practicality, there's just no way with everything in as far as the surrounding properties to be able to straighten that out, especially since New York was reconstructed back in 2013-ish. That would be very difficult to try to straighten New York out.
Even by the slightest amount, because quite honestly, if you're sitting at either one of those stop signs, trying to get line of sight is damn near impossible down New York.
Done it before. I fully understand the concern. I think at the scope of the project, that would be very difficult to do. Something I think we can maybe try to look at a little bit, and I'll take into consideration. But that straighten that out, any significance would be very difficult.
Well, again, any bit would help, but the cone of vision coming off those stop signs is horrid.
Sure.
Mr. Collins or Lieutenant? I can't see your bars from here. But do you happen to, off the top of your head, know of crash data as a result?
I don't have time. I can look at it.
I mean, that's always been a concern. Oshkosh obviously has quite a few, what I call zigzags. There's one on the, pick and save on the north side too. It escapes me at the moment, but.
Are you aware of anything?
I'm strictly basing it off of what I've recalled hearing. I think rare, but that doesn't give you the actual data.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously a potential bottleneck that I'd honestly like to see addressed. It does pose a bit of a safety issue there. I mean, it's at the very least unexpected when people approach it. I mean, and again, you wind up with conflicts on New York if you're going straight across Algoma in a southerly, roughly southerly direction, because you're sliding across on the other side of the road too, at that point.
I think that from my perspective, the more challenging and potentially illegal action would actually be going eastbound on New York, traveling through here, actually going against the grain of traffic to try to get over here. You know, at least heading this direction, you're turning with the flow of traffic and getting through the intersection rather than turning against it.
Oh, and again, you're talking about the traffic on Algoma. I'm talking about the traffic on New York.
I know, I'm saying east-west, right? If you're heading east on New York, you go against Algoma traffic to get through the intersection, whereas if you're heading westbound, you actually pseudo turn with traffic to be able to get through it through the intersection.
Again, no argument. That's the safer of those two options. But what I'm suggesting is, if you've got traffic on New York trying to go in opposite directions off that two-way stop simultaneously, you wind up with a point of conflict.
The hard part with that is this point here, and then simultaneously on the other side, this point and this line here are the right-of-way lines.
Yep.
So being able to try to merely offset this and make any kind of difference is extremely difficult. But I fully understand the concern.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a perfect solution, short of acquiring a large piece of property, which we don't want to do. But what's actually on that southerly section of New York for access to New York? I think it's one driveway, two driveways, maybe.
Off of New York, this parcel
Yeah,
here.
Yeah. There's the house right on the corner. I know that has a driveway that goes in. And there might be one other. I don't think there's anything on the opposite side. So leads one to wonder, could we make that a no-through in that section of New York? Accessible only from the other end?
You're talking only being able to,
Cul-de-sac it essentially, to make it safer.
That's a main artery.
Yeah, like when the bridge is down, I have to go that way.
It's, I use that way going home 50%
Which goes right to
every
my
day.
argument, though, with the added volume of traffic, it makes it less safe.
Well, we could,
It's a bad intersection, flat out. It is, always has been. It's been that way for, 35 years that I've been driving through there, but. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, just as long as it's on the radar screen.
all right. Moving south, the existing pavement south of New York is a 32-foot. We are proposing a 29-foot, two 12-foot lanes, and the 5-foot bike lane. So everything south of New York, per the bike and ped plan, is a full bike lane. I believe it stops at New York, where east and west there are the Sharrows. So we're continuing with the bike and ped plan. It's out there today. We're just continuing with it. On the east side of Algoma in this stretch, there's parking in front of Reed School. I think it's a limited term parking for drop-off. We're actually proposing a parking bay to help kind of designate the area a little more efficiently, and then as well as provide a little more green space through the corridor rather than a full-out parking lane through that whole stretch. And continuing south, again, 32-foot existing pavement with that parking. We're proposing the 29 with a 9.5-foot parking bay off to the side of it. We get to Vine Avenue. Again, the corridor, remains very similar. The existing pavement's a 32-foot width street. We're proposing the 29-foot south of Vine, two 12-foot lanes and the 5-foot bike lane. and then parking bays at various locations throughout the university. And that remains pretty constant all the way through the rest of the corridor through the university. And the two 12-foot lanes in the bike lane, and then I've had meetings with the university, and they are wanting to keep their bump out parking areas for whatever they use them for the short-term parking.
What's the additional width on those parking bays?
Which ones are you talking about specifically?
Are they different widths, or? I just figured they all be the same.
Widths as in,
Like additional, pavement width compared to the rest of where it's just driving.
the parking bays are 9.5 feet wide.
And they're keeping the crosswalks will be in the same locations. The one improvement we're making is we currently in front of Reeve Union, which goes over to Clo, we have an old traffic signal there when it used to be a through street. So we use the traffic signal functions as a pedestrian signal currently. We're going to be replacing that with an RRFB, the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons, so that then traffic won't have to stop. It'll just be the flashing yellow yield to the pedestrians. And that's something that we've wanted to do for a long time, and that's something that the police department for UWO requested as well. They like those a lot better than the ones that stop traffic, so that.
Yeah, that's so funny. When we were-
Those college kids don't follow it either way, so.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So they like those better than. So in the university, we have all three types of traffic control. We have the stop light there. We have the RFBs, which we just added one up further up by Reeve a couple years ago, and then we have what's called the Hawk signal over in front of Sage Hall, and that one is. I mean, in theory, it's
works
kind of the
when
newest
during the
thing,
busy
but-
time.
Yeah,
But
in
I remember when they
reality,
first
it's
installed
not
it, it
the
was
best.
way down the street where nobody even walked.
Yeah.
And I put a motion to move it, and then they did eventually.
Yeah, that was interesting too. That was another story, but I wasn't here at that time. But when we put them in, we made some recommendations where to put it.
Yeah.
They wanted it somewhere else, but then eventually realized that wasn't the best place. So then,
that's the best
paid to
place
move
to
it.
have one of those.
Yeah,
I
it
was in
really
business
helps.
school and we used it. I mean, it was constantly being used like during school. I mean, I don't know if we could take it out of commission during the summer or something to help flow traffic or replace it with the RFB, but I know that highly used every hour on the hour.
It was good because you felt safe, like,
There, yeah.
you knew they were stopping.
And then you'd get annoyed when someone would keep, going from driving and
walking, yeah.
it, like, don't just run. Like,
You
they
get
have to
both
get to
sides.
work too.
Right.
So,
yep.
Are they planning to bury the utilities at all in any of these sections? Or?
As far as the overhead lines,
Yeah.
so that would be a private cost, or cost to the city, but that's not something the city's looking to take on at this time. I know the university has started conversations with Wisconsin Public Service to try to provide some costs for them to see what it would be to underground. Because I know they are wanting that corridor, at least to the university, to be underground. So
I know I've heard it discussed. I just couldn't remember
that's
what
that's my
level.
long answer to the short yes or no is from the city's end it's not being discussed, but I know the university is having conversations privately with Wisconsin Electric or We Energies to see what the costs are going to be to do it underground.
All right, thanks.
Really, the last note I've kind of got on this is once we get final plans and construction complete, this advisory board would see kind of the parking restrictions, actual dimensions brought forth to make sure the ordinance gets updated appropriately.
What's the prospective start date of this project? 22, right after?
It's a great question. We're still in preliminary design stages. I guess in my perfect world, we'd be out for bid late this year, awarding hopefully in January timeframe. at the council level, and then at that point in time, it would be up to contractor schedule. So I could easily see this starting work sometime, as soon as frost is out of the ground or early spring, so, March, maybe into April.
Becomes a real pertinent question for obvious reasons, because that's a heavy traffic area, except for, well, during the school year, you don't want to be doing construction in there. So,
Unfortunately, with a mile of street, we're not gonna have any choice.
and I get that, and I bring it up only because people need to know that it's gonna be a mess,
We've
whenever
had,
you start it.
we've had several meetings with the university already. This is gonna be a multi-phase project with utilities going multiple directions. Being able to phase this appropriately is going to be key. But I fully expect Algoma to be closed from start of construction through, fall timeframe.
Good 6 months.
Yes.
So, for any students that are still in town and watching, don't plan on going up or down Algoma, one way or the other, in your car, in the proper direction, or on sidewalks, in either direction, because it ain't gonna happen. But obviously, it's work that needs to get done.
I'd like to see eventually make Algoma the pedestrian mall, and then reopen Elmwood and have like a loop, and also reopen Woodland. You could have a loop Elmwood and to Pearl, and like another thing that always annoyed me is Osceola. You got this little jog here. I thought they should have extended Osceola through to Elmwood. I used to delivery drive, and I don't know how many people I'd see would constantly just go the wrong way on Algoma for that number of feet.
Sure.
They should have a study, like, especially after the Axle Tech is out of the area, for how the traffic would flow. Like I said, it'd be best if you had like a loop on the one side by Elmwood and maybe Pearl on the other, and have the majority of traffic flow around the college, as close to around the college as possible. There's much more pedestrian traffic on Algoma to warrant a pedestrian mall than there is on Elmwood.
Yeah, I know that's something the university's discussed over the years, but they don't currently have it in any of their plans, I don't think.
Well, that would require they take ownership of all that, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, which they're never gonna do.
Does the city have plans for the future after the Axle Tech is out of there? Or? I've seen plans for the university, like taking over most of that. But like I said, I'd be interested if we have a traffic plan for that vicinity.
I've seen some sketches of plans from back in the 90s or 2000s that kind of made Pearl being the main corridor through there to kind of get traffic out of the college, but nothing's been done, at least in the decade plus that I've been involved.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, unless someone else has another question. All right, which then brings us back to you, Mr. Collins, update on the Jackson Street Road configuration.
Yeah, so if you noticed this week, they're working on that. They did the sidewalk, or some sidewalk rehab, and then a little bit of sidewalk work for the new crosswalk at Congress last week. This week, they are removing pavement markings. They worked on that yesterday and today. They still got a little bit of work to do there. They've started laying out the new pavement markings, so I believe they're going to still try to stripe that yet this week, depending with weather. Probably end of this week, by early next week, I would assume they would be done with that.
Yeah, so you guys just kind of expound upon that a little bit. So right now, they have traffic pushed out to the outside lanes, so they're gonna do all of the middle striping work, kind of the twiddle work, and then move all the traffic over to either one side or the other, and then paint the outside lanes, flip it, and paint the other outside lanes. So it's a kind of a three-phased approach to be able to get this completed.
Has there been any pushback?
Not yet.
Well, I mean, it hasn't really started,
Yeah, I've seen it
per
on the
se.
news.
Yeah, but I've heard some rumblings that people are less than happy about the inconvenience. And again, that's to be expected, but, okay.
The interesting, this is the first time we've ever used water blasting, so we had the contractor water blast. So far, it looks pretty good, so we'll see once they're done what it looks like. But it does appear to be a better method than the scarifying that's the traditional method. Water blasting is newer and more expensive, but it does seem to work better, so we'll see.
I think the other road diets we've installed in the last few years have worked out pretty good, you know, like Murdoch and Ninth.
Yep, those are both very successful, so.
Good deal. Are there any future agenda requests? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.